When did trusting the wrong person nearly destroy you? I never thought my life would unravel because of one person. But trust is dangerous when you give it to the wrong hands. Mine almost destroyed me. It started small, like most disasters do. A favor here, a little lie there. Nothing that screamed danger. Just quiet shifts in the ground beneath me that I mistook for normal life. His name was Daniel, my best friend since college. At least, that's what I thought. He was the one I leaned on after my father died, the one who stood beside me at my wedding, who held my newborn daughter before some of my relatives even had the chance. He was woven into the fabric of my life so tightly I couldn't imagine pulling him out without tearing everything. The first real crack came with money. He called me late one night, his voice tight, almost trembling. "Man, I just need a bridge loan. 2 weeks tops. I'm waiting on this client check." I wired him $5,000 the next morning. No hesitation. That's what friends do. He paid it back like he said he would. Clean. Quick. No problem. That was the hook. A few months later, he needed more. This time, $20,000. His voice carried a different edge, like shame mixed with urgency. He said his business partner had screwed him over, that he just needed help to keep the lights on. I told my wife it was temporary. "Daniel's always been there for me," I said. "He'd do the same if it were me." She frowned, but didn't push. I transferred the money. Again, he repaid. A little late, but he did. That repayment was his greatest weapon. It kept me believing. Trust works like that. It doesn't break all at once. It stretches, thins, until it's a thread you don't realize is one tug away from snapping. The third time, I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell anyone. Daniel came to my office looking like hell, eyes bloodshot, smelling faintly of whiskey even though it was please man, he whispered, not even sitting down. "They'll hurt me if I don't come through." He didn't say who they were, and I didn't ask. $50,000 left my account that afternoon. He promised a week. A week became a month. Then two. The calls started then. Numbers I didn't recognize. Men with voices like gravel, asking if I knew where Daniel was, reminding me he owed them money, telling me I should think about my family. I remember one night clearly my daughter was asleep upstairs when the phone rang. A voice I didn't know said, "Cute kid. Be a shame if she grew up without a dad." My hand went cold on the receiver. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I confronted Daniel the next day. He laughed. Actually he laughed. "They're just trying to scare you, man. They do that. It's nothing." He said it like I was overreacting, like death threats were just background noise. Something shifted in me that day. For the first time, I saw him clearly. The lies, the manipulation, the way he leaned on my loyalty like a crutch while dragging me into hell with him. But it was already too late. Because when you let someone that close, you give them more than trust. You give them access to your family, to your secrets, to the parts of you you can't protect once they turn. The night it all collapsed, I came home to find my wife pale and shaking. Someone had been in the house. Nothing stolen, but drawers open, pictures turned face down, and on the kitchen counter, a note in Daniel's handwriting, "Trust me one last time." My chest tightened like a fist was inside me, because I realized that it wasn't just strangers I had to fear. It was him, and I had no idea what he was about to do next. When I saw that note on the counter, my stomach dropped like I'd been pushed off a cliff. "Trust me one last time." The handwriting was unmistakable. Daniel had been in my house, in my kitchen, while my wife and daughter slept upstairs. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. My wife whispered, "He's crossed the line, hasn't he?" Her voice was trembling, but steady enough to hold back panic. I wanted to tell her no, that it was just another stupid mistake from a friend who'd lost his way. But I couldn't lie anymore. I called Daniel, straight to voicemail. I texted, "What did you do?" He responded a minute later with a single line, "Meet me at the old mill." Alone. Everything in me screamed not to go. But ignoring him wasn't an option. If he had the guts to break into my home, leave that note, who knew what he was capable of? I kissed my daughter's forehead, told my wife to lock every door and keep the lights on, and drove into the night with my hands shaking on the wheel. The old mill sat abandoned on the edge of town, its broken windows like black eyes in the dark. I parked under a flickering street lamp and stepped inside. The smell of rust and mildew hit me first. Then his voice, echoing from the shadows. "You took too long." He emerged thinner than I remembered, eyes sunken, jaw twitching. He looked less like my best friend and more like a stranger wearing his skin. "What the hell are you doing in my house, Daniel?" I demanded. He smirked, like I was the unreasonable one. "I needed to be sure that you'd come, that I could still count on you." "Count on me?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "You've dragged me into your mess, put my family at risk." "They're not at risk if you just help me," he snapped. His voice bounced off the concrete walls, manic and sharp. "One last deal, just one, and we're free." "What deal?" He leaned in, eyes darting around as though someone else was listening. "I've got merchandise, worth hundreds of thousands. All I need is somewhere to stash it for a few days, just until the buyer comes through." Merchandise. The word made bile rise in my throat. Drugs, guns, or worse. And he wanted to drag me deeper into this abyss. "No," I said, firm, my voice steadying with anger. "You've already gone too far." His face twisted, the smirk collapsing into something darker. "I knew you'd say that. You always were the noble one." He spat the word like poison. But don't forget I know everything about you. Your accounts, your passwords, your secrets. He tapped his temple. All up here. A chill ran down my spine. He wasn't wrong. Years of friendship had made me careless. He knew where I banked, where my daughter went to school, even the security code to my house. You wouldn't dare, I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. He leaned closer, his breath sour with liquor. You think these guys call you? They call me. I've been keeping them off your back, protecting you. But if you won't help me, maybe I'll tell them where you live. My heart hammered. I realized then this wasn't about friendship anymore. Daniel wasn't drowning and reaching for me to pull him up. He was dragging me under with him. I backed away slowly, every step heavy as concrete. Stay away from my family. He laughed, a hollow, broken laugh that echoed in the empty mill. You really don't get it, do you? Your family's already part of this. There's no walking away now. I left before he could say more, the sound of his laughter chasing me out into the night. But the whole drive home, his words echoed in my skull. There's no walking away now. When I walked through the door, my wife was waiting, her arms crossed, eyes wide with fear. Well? I opened my mouth, but nothing came. How could I explain that the man I trusted most in the world had become my family's greatest threat? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway outside my daughter's room, listening to her soft breaths, while my mind raced through scenarios. And just before dawn, my phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel. They know where you live. If you don't help me tonight, you'll find out what they can do. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. My chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me. They know where you live. That wasn't a threat I could ignore. That was a countdown. My wife woke to find me still in the hallway, phone clutched in my hand. She looked at my face and knew instantly something was wrong. What did he say? She whispered. I handed her the phone. She read, then pressed her fist to her mouth. We have to go to the police. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But what would I say? That my best friend was threatening me? That shadowy man I'd never met were going to hurt my family unless I helped him hide? Something? I had no evidence. Just texts that could vanish the second he deleted them. And what if the police looked deeper and decided I was involved? My money was already tangled up with his debts. We can't, I said finally, my voice heavy. Not yet. The look she gave me almost broke me. A mix of fear, betrayal, and something worse, disappointment. The day passed like a blur. I went through the motions at work, but every vibration in my pocket made my pulse spike. Around noon, a black SUV slowed in front of my office. Tinted windows, no plates. It didn't stop, but the message was clear. I wasn't just paranoid. They really did know where I was. That night, Daniel called. This time I answered. His tone was too calm, too rehearsed. They'll be expecting you at the docks. Midnight. You helped me move the shipment. This all goes away. You don't, and, well, I don't need to spell it out. My throat went dry. Why me? Because you're the only one I can trust, he said smoothly, like the irony didn't choke him. And because they already know you're in. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him I was done, that I'd never help him again. But my daughter's laughter floated down the stairs at that exact moment, pure, innocent, unscarred by the world, and the words froze in my throat. At 11:30, I kissed her goodnight like it might be the last time. My wife stood in the doorway, arms crossed, silent tears on her cheeks. If you walk out that door, you're not just risking your life, you're risking ours. I know, I whispered, but if I don't, I couldn't finish. We both knew what Daniel meant. The docks were darker than the night sky, the water lapping softly against rusted pylons. Daniel was there, pacing like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw me, he grinned. Relief washed over his face, twisted with triumph. You came. Tell me what this is, I demanded. He gestured to a shipping container. Just boxes. You helped me move them into the truck. We're square. I hesitated. Something in the air felt wrong. Too quiet. Too staged. My instinct screamed trap. The container door groaned open. Inside, stacks of black duffel bags. Too many for just one shipment. Too neatly lined, too deliberately arranged. And the smell sharp, chemical, like gasoline and bleach mixed together. What the hell is this? Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. Insurance. Worth millions. Once it's gone, we're untouchable. I took a step back. This isn't merchandise. This is... The sound of footsteps cut me off. From the shadows, men emerged. 3, 4, maybe more. Heavy boots on concrete, faces obscured by hoodies and masks. Daniel's voice dropped low. I told you, they know where you live. You're in this whether you like it or not. My pulse hammered in my ears. Every instinct screamed to run, but behind me was only darkness and water. Trapped. One of the men tossed me a pair of gloves. Help him load, he said, his voice gravelly, or we pay your family a visit. The gloves hit the ground at my feet. My hands shook as I bent to pick them up. Daniel leaned close, his whisper cutting colder than the night air. See? We're in this together, just like old times. I slipped the gloves on, my stomach twisting. Every box I lifted felt heavier than my body could bear, not because of the weight, but because with each one, I sank deeper into something I couldn't escape. And all the while I knew, once this truck was loaded, my life would never be mine again. Each bag I lifted from that container felt like a chain tightening around my neck. They weren't just heavy, they were damning. Whatever was inside them, I knew it wasn't anything I could explain away if the cops showed up. Or worse, if these men decided I wasn't useful anymore. Daniel whistled while he worked, like we were just moving furniture. See? He said, flashing me that crooked smile I used to trust. Easy. By tomorrow, this'll all be behind us. I almost laughed. Behind us? He thought this was an ending, when it was only the beginning of something darker. One of the masked men stepped closer, watching me with unnerving stillness. You two friends? He asked. Daniel clapped a hand on my shoulder before I could answer. Brothers, he said smoothly, always have been. I kept my mouth shut, because the truth that I was seconds away from strangling him with my bare hands would have gotten me killed on the spot. When the last duffel hit the truck bed, the leader checked his watch. Good. Drive it to the address. Both of you. Daniel nodded eagerly. Of course. Then he glanced at me. His eyes sparkled. Not with gratitude, but with ownership. He knew I was trapped. We climbed into the cab, Daniel behind the wheel, me staring out the passenger window at the black water glinting under the moon. He drove like nothing was wrong, drumming the steering wheel with his fingers, humming a song we used to blast on road trips. Finally, I couldn't hold it in. What's in the bags, Daniel? Does it matter? It does if I'm risking everything. He sighed, as if I were a child asking too many questions. Chemicals, precursors, stuff they need to cook, worth more than gold in the right hands. I felt bile rise in my throat. Drugs. Not even the finished product, this was the raw fuel of poison, enough to rot an entire city from the inside. And I was the one moving it. You're insane, I muttered. He glanced at me, almost offended. I'm surviving. There's a difference. The warehouse we pulled up to looked abandoned, but the security cameras mounted on every corner told another story. Two men waved us inside, guns slung casually across their chests. As we unloaded, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I froze. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Don't. But curiosity overpowered fear. I pulled it out, shielding the screen from the others. A single text from my wife. Police just left. Someone reported a disturbance. They're watching the house. Please come home. Relief and dread warred in my chest. If the cops were involved now, maybe I had a way out. But if Daniel or these men knew I'd even thought about flipping, they'd bury me before I reached my car. When we finished, the leader handed Daniel a thick envelope. He flipped it open just enough for me to see the bills. My stomach turned. Blood money. Then the leader's gaze shifted to me. You did good tonight. My mouth was dry. I didn't have a choice. He tilted his head. There's always a choice. Remember that. The words felt less like wisdom and more like a warning. On the drive back, Daniel was practically glowing. You see? We're golden now. A few more runs like this and we're set for life. I stared at him in disbelief. You think this ends with money? You think they're just gonna let you walk away after? He smirked. They'll let me. I'm useful. And me? He didn't answer, just kept drumming the wheel. That silence said everything. When he dropped me off, the street was eerily quiet. My wife yanked me inside before the truck was even out of sight. You smell like chemicals, she hissed, covering her nose. I couldn't even argue. I collapsed at the kitchen table, burying my face in my hands. She set her phone down in front of me. A recording. Grainy voices. The police officer who'd stopped by had left his body cam running. Our neighbor had described seeing a man Daniel breaking into our house the night before. The words were on tape. Evidence. Hope flickered. Finally, something I could use. But that hope curdled when I realized what it meant. If I turned this in, Daniel would know. And Daniel didn't just know me. He knew everything. The next morning, another text arrived. From an unknown number. Nice house. Wouldn't want anything to happen to it. Attached was a photo. My daughter's bedroom window. Taken from outside. The photo nearly slipped from my hands. My daughter's window captured in grainy pixels. A pale curtain drawn just enough to see her nightlight glowing inside. The implication was louder than a gunshot. They'd been there, outside her room, watching. I ran upstairs 2 steps at a time. She was still asleep, curled up with her stuffed rabbit, chest rising and falling peacefully. She had no idea the wolves were at the door. Back downstairs, my wife stood frozen at the kitchen table, her face ashen. We have to go to the police now, she whispered. This isn't just Daniel anymore. This is organized. I wanted to agree. I should have agreed. But my mind raced through the consequences. If I went to the police, they'd ask questions. They'd dig. They'd trace that truck back to me, to last night, to the bags of poison I'd carried with my own hands. Evidence or not, I was already complicit. And Daniel, God, Daniel, he'd never let me walk away. He'd scorch the earth before letting me expose him. I need more time, I muttered, my voice cracking. Just one day. One day, my wife's voice rose, trembling with rage. While strangers stalk our daughter's window? While you play chess with your psychopath friend? She slammed her fist on the table, tears spilling. You're supposed to protect us, not drag us into his hell. Her words cut deeper than any threat Daniel could make. Because she was right. I wasn't protecting anyone. I was feeding the fire. That afternoon, Daniel showed up at my office unannounced. He strolled in like he owned the place, grinning, slapping my back, calling me partner. My secretary looked at him like he was trouble, and she wasn't wrong. When we were alone, he dropped a grin. They liked you, he said flatly. Said you kept your cool. That means you're in. In what? I demanded. He leaned close, lowering his voice. The next run. Bigger, riskier, and worth 3 times as much. No, I said instantly. My hands were shaking under the desk. I'm done. Last night was it. His eyes narrowed. You think you can just walk away? After they saw you? After they trusted you? I didn't ask to be there. But you were. He jabbed a finger into my chest. And now you're theirs. Same as me. You either play along, or you're dead weight. And you know what happens to dead weight. My office suddenly felt like a cage. I wanted to lunge across the desk and strangle him, but the image of that photo my daughter's window held me back. I couldn't afford to act recklessly. Not now. That night, I barely spoke. I just sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the baby monitor like it was a lifeline. My wife put a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft but fierce. If you don't go to the police, I will. Her threat terrified me more than Daniel's, because if she went, he'd know instantly, and he wouldn't hesitate. At M, another text lit my phone. Tomorrow, meet me at the storage unit on 14th. Bring your car. Don't be late. I sat in the dark, the glow of the screen burning into my eyes. My choices were gone. Either I went deeper into Daniel's nightmare, or I risked my family being collateral. But as I stared at that message, another thought crept in. Something cold, ruthless, foreign. Maybe the only way out wasn't the police. Maybe the only way out was Daniel himself. Because if he was gone, the threats would end with him. Wouldn't they? That thought killing Daniel lodged in my brain like a splinter I couldn't dig out. It disgusted me, terrified me. But the more I replayed that photo of my daughter's window, the less impossible it felt. The next morning, I drove to the storage unit on 14th like his text demanded. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. If this was another run, I'd be deeper than ever. But if I didn't show up, they'd come looking. For me, for my family. Daniel was already there, leaning against the door of Unit 53, smoking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Knew you'd come through, he said, flicking the cigarette away. You always do. I didn't answer. My jaw was clenched too tight to speak. He unlocked the unit with a rusty screech. Inside were more duffel bags, stacked high, reeking of the same chemical tang. But there was something else too. Crates. Wooden, stenciled with markings I didn't recognize. Military markings. My stomach dropped. What the hell is this? Daniel grinned like a magician revealing his final trick. Guns. High grade. Straight from overseas. Worth a fortune. I stepped back, bile rising. You're insane. This isn't survival anymore. This is war. Survival. War, same thing when you're cornered. He crouched, prying one crate open with a crowbar. Inside, sleek black rifles gleamed under the dim light. He ran a hand over them like they were trophies. I wanted to scream, to run, to call the cops right then and there. But then Daniel turned, crowbar in hand, eyes sharp. You're not thinking of flipping, are you? His words froze me. No, I lied quickly. Good. He tapped the crowbar against his palm, studying me. Because if you were, I'd have to remind you what's at stake. Your little girl, your wife, everything you love. I swallowed hard. My palms were sweating inside my pockets. I'd never been closer to violence in my life, and for the first time, I realized Daniel wasn't just bluffing. He'd do it. If pushed, he'd really do it. We loaded the car in silence. Each gun, each bag, felt like another nail in my coffin. As I drove away, my mind was a storm. I couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep letting him drag me deeper into hell. But the police weren't an option. He'd built a net tight enough to trap me with him. So I circled back to that thought, the one that made my stomach twist. If Daniel disappeared, if he simply stopped existing, maybe the threats would end. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the house dark around me, a kitchen knife on the wood, the blade glinting in the moonlight. My wife found me there at dawn, eyes bloodshot, fingers gripping the handle. What are you doing? She whispered, horrified. I looked up at her, voice hoarse. I don't see another way. Her breath caught. You're talking about killing him. I nodded, slowly. She sat across from me, silent tears streaming. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, finally, if you do this, you'll lose yourself. And we'll lose you. Even if it works. Her words cut deeper than the knife ever could. But as much as I wanted to believe her, the truth was clawing at me. If I didn't end Daniel, Daniel would end us. The following evening, he texted again. Tomorrow night, meet me at the cabin. We'll finalize everything. I knew that cabin. An old hunting shack outside town. Isolated. No neighbors. No cops. No witnesses. It was the perfect place. For him. Or for me. The drive to the cabin felt like a march toward execution. Whether it would be his or mine, I didn't know. My hands gripped the wheel so tight they ached, sweat slicking my palms. Every mile deeper into the woods, cell service weakened until it was gone altogether. No way to call for help. Just silence. Trees pressing close like witnesses. The cabin sat crooked on its foundation, half hidden by pines. A single bulb glowed over the porch, casting Daniel's shadow long and sharp across the dirt. He was already there, pacing, phone to his ear. When he spotted my headlights, he waved me forward like nothing was wrong. I killed the engine but didn't step out. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at him through the windshield. He looked thinner than ever, skin pulled tight over bone, eyes darting with paranoia. And still, that same cocky smirk twitched at his mouth when I finally got out. "Took you long enough," he said. "We're almost done. One more move, then we're set for life." I forced myself to stay calm. "What's the plan?" He motioned me inside. The cabin smelled of mildew and cigarettes. The table was buried under maps, stacks of cash, and a handgun laid out like a centerpiece. He saw me glance at it and grinned. "Relax. Insurance." I stayed near the door, my back against the wall. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Daniel, this has to stop." He looked up, surprised, then laughed. "Stop. We're just getting started. Look at what we've already done, man. You think you can just walk away now?" "Yes," I said, firmer than I felt. "I can, and I will." His eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying." My voice cracked. "You're dragging me into something I never wanted. I've got a family, a daughter." He slammed his fist on the table, money scattering to the floor. "And who do you think's been keeping them safe? Me. If it weren't for me, those guys would have ripped your life apart already." "No," I snapped, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "They wouldn't even know me if it weren't for you." The room went deadly quiet. His jaw clenched. His eyes darkened. For the first time, I saw it clearly. He wasn't my friend anymore. He was a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable. "You'd sell me out, wouldn't you?" he hissed. "After everything we've been through. After I made you part of this." I never wanted to be part of this. His hand moved, too fast, reaching for the gun on the table. Instinct roared in my blood. I lunged, slamming into him, the table crashing sideways, maps and cash and glass shattering to the floor. We grappled in the dark, the smell of sweat and smoke filling my nose. His fingers grazed a weapon. Mine found the knife I'd hidden in my jacket pocket, the one I'd brought as my own insurance. For a second, time froze. His hand on the gun, my hand on the knife, his eyes burning into mine. "You won't do it," he spat, teeth bared. "You've never had the guts." And maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't. But then I saw it again, my daughter's window, glowing soft in the dark, a stranger's camera watching her sleep. I drove the knife forward. His scream tore through the cabin, ragged and animal. He staggered back, clutching his side, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. Blood bloomed through his shirt, dark and spreading. I stood frozen, the knife slippery in my hand. My chest heaved. My ears rang. Daniel dropped to one knee, choking out a laugh even through the pain. "You," finally grew a spine. His smile was twisted, blood on his teeth. "But you think this ends with me? You think they'll let you walk away?" His words echoed in my skull. Even as he collapsed, even as the life drained from his eyes, I couldn't shake them, because deep down, I knew he might be right. Daniel lay sprawled on the cabin floor, blood soaking into the warped wooden boards. His chest rose and fell in shallow, rattling breaths. I stood over him, the knife still in my hand, my body trembling with adrenaline and horror. I should have finished it. One thrust, one final blow, and all of it, the threats, the fear, the manipulation, would be gone. But I froze. Because even now, even after everything, a part of me still saw my best friend. The man who stood beside me at my wedding, who carried my father's casket, who once loaned me gas money when I was broke in college. My mind twisted between the man he'd been and the monster he'd become. His lips moved. I had to lean down to hear him. "You're dead too," he whispered, coughing blood. "They'll come for you. For her. Her? My daughter." I staggered back, nausea rising, bile burning my throat. I grabbed his phone from the table. Missed calls. Dozens. Messages from numbers I didn't recognize. One pinned at the top read, "Deliver tonight or we collect what's owed." I dropped it like it burned me. My hands shook as I dialed 911 on my own phone. But I stopped before pressing call. What would I even say? "Hi." I stabbed my best friend who dragged me into a gun-running operation. They'd never believe I wasn't part of it. And Daniel had been right about one thing: the people behind him wouldn't just stop because he was gone. I pressed my sleeve against the knife, wiped it clean, and left him gasping on the floor. The drive home was a blur. Trees, headlights, the white lines on the road all smearing together. My reflection in the windshield didn't look like me anymore. My eyes were wild, hollow, older somehow. When I walked through the door, my wife was waiting. One look at me and she knew. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, what did you do?" I couldn't answer. My voice had abandoned me. She gripped my arms, shaking me. "Is he?" "I don't know," I croaked finally. We sat in silence, the weight of it crushing us. Then she whispered, "We have to run." Her words pierced through the fog. Run. It made sense. The people behind Daniel would come. They'd want answers, repayment, blood. Staying meant death. But running meant leaving everything behind: our house, our jobs, our lives, our daughter's school, her friends, her innocence. That night, I packed a bag for her. Just the essentials. Pajamas, her rabbit, a photo of us at the beach last summer. My wife moved through the house like a ghost, unplugging electronics, gathering cash, deleting accounts. Every creak of the floorboards outside made me flinch. Every car passing down the street felt like it was slowing to watch us. At a.m., Just as we were about to leave, my phone buzzed. A message. From Daniel's number. You think you can run? My blood ran cold. I stared at the glowing screen, my pulse hammering. Was it him? Had he survived? Or was it them, the people he'd dragged me into hell with, already holding his phone, already watching me? My wife grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. We go, now. We slipped into the night, our daughter asleep in her car seat, the world we knew shrinking in the rearview mirror. But as the miles stretched behind us, that message replayed in my mind. You think you can run? And I realized I didn't know if we'd ever be free. We drove for hours, headlights cutting through endless dark. My wife sat rigid in the passenger seat, our daughter curled up in the back, oblivious. The clock glowed past a.m., but sleep was a luxury none of us could afford. Every time I checked the mirror, I expected headlights to appear, following, closing in. Finally, we stopped at a run-down motel off the interstate. The kind of place where no one asks questions, where guests pay cash and don't leave names. My wife checked us in under a fake last name, and we carried our daughter inside, careful not to wake her. The room smelled of cigarette smoke and damp carpet. The curtains didn't close all the way. I shoved a chair under the door handle anyway, then sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. The last message still glared at me. You think you can run? I stared at it until my vision blurred. Finally, exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. My wife was pacing, phone to her ear, whispering urgently. She hung up when she saw me. I called my cousin, she said. In another state. She'll take us in, at least until we figure out what's next. I rubbed my face gritty with stubble. If we show up on her doorstep, we put her in danger too. Her eyes flashed. And what do you call this? She gestured around the dingy room. You think this is a lie for our daughter? Running from motel to motel, waiting for them to show up? Her words cut deep. She was right. But what choice did we have? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. A new message. This time, it wasn't from Daniel's number. It was a known. Cabin. Noon. If you're not there, we come for your family. I felt my stomach drop. They knew. They always knew. My wife saw my face pale. What is it? I handed her the phone. She read it, then closed her eyes, her whole body trembling. No, you're not going back there. They'll kill you. I shook my head. If I don't, they'll kill all of us. Her hand gripped my arm, nails digging in. Then we go to the police. Witness protection. Something. They'll never believe me, I said flatly, not without proof. To them, I'm just another guy caught moving bags. She sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. So what? You just walk into a trap. I walk into it, I said, voice low. But maybe I don't walk in unarmed. Her eyes widened. No. Yes, I said, steady now. I've been waiting for them to stop. But they won't. Not until one of us does something final. The silence between us was thick, heavy. My daughter stirred in her sleep, clutching her rabbit tighter. The sight of her small hands, innocent and fragile, hardened something inside me. I'd already crossed the line the night I put that knife in Daniel. There was no going back. At 11:30, I kissed my daughter's forehead. She was still asleep, her breath soft and even. My wife grabbed my wrist as I stood. Her eyes glistened. If you don't come back, her voice broke. I will. I lied. The drive to the cabin felt like walking into my own grave. The trees pressed closer, the road narrowed, until finally the shack came into view. This time, no porch light, no Daniel pacing, just silence. I parked, stepped out, every sense sharpened to a knife's edge. The air was heavy, buzzing with tension. Then I heard it, footsteps inside, slow, deliberate. I pushed the door open. The cabin was darker than before, blinds drawn tight. And there in the center of the room, sat Daniel, alive. Bandages wrapped around his torso, bloodstains seeping through. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with the same fire. You really thought you could kill me? He rasped, a twisted smile spreading across his face. My mouth went dry, my pulse roared. Because if Daniel was alive, everything I'd done, everything I'd risked, meant nothing. And the nightmare was only beginning. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Daniel shouldn't have been alive. Not after the blood I saw pooling beneath him, the way his body crumpled on the floor of that cabin. Yet here he was, bandaged, pale, grinning like death itself had shaken his hand and let him pass. You're surprised? He rasped, his voice raw. Guess you didn't push hard enough. My throat was tight. Words caught like thorns. How? He tapped his side where the bandages were soaked through. They found me, patched me up. Turns out I'm too valuable to die. He chuckled, low and broken. And now, thanks to you, they don't trust me the way they used to. So guess what, brother? They're watching you now. The air thickened. I scanned the corners, the shadows. And then I saw two men, silent as statues, standing in the back of the room, armed, watching. You brought me here to what? Finish me? I asked, my voice shaking. Daniel's grin widened. No, I brought you here to choose. Choose what? He leaned forward, wincing at the pain. You either step up and prove you're loyal or they decide you're dead weight. And you know what happens to dead weight. The words echoed, the same phrase he'd used before. Only now, it wasn't a threat from him. It was a verdict from the people behind him. One of the men stepped forward, dropping a bag at my feet. A gun clattered out, black and heavy, catching the dim light. "Prove yourself," the man said flatly, "or your family pays." My stomach lurched. I stared at the weapon, bile rising in my throat. "Prove myself how?" Daniel's eyes gleamed cruel. "Simple. There's a name. A guy who's been running his mouth to the cops. You take him out, and you're in. You refuse." He shrugged weakly. "Well, you won't live long enough to regret it." I felt the walls closing in. I wanted to scream, to lunge at him, to end it once and for all. But the presence of those armed men kept me rooted. One wrong move, and they'd put me down like a dog. "You dragged me into this," I hissed. "No," Daniel corrected, his voice sharp. "You walked in. Every choice you made, every time you said yes, it brought you here. Don't blame me for your spine finally snapping." I stared at him, rage boiling under my skin. All those years of friendship, trust, brotherhood turned into this moment. Him, sitting smug and broken. Me, standing on the edge of damnation. One of the men shoved the bag closer with his boot. "Tonight," he said, "we'll be watching." I looked at the gun, then back at Daniel. He smiled like he'd already won. But inside me, something snapped. If they wanted me to kill for them, maybe I could turn it. Maybe the only way out wasn't escape, it was using their own rules against them. I bent down, picked up the gun, and slid it back into the bag. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. "Fine," I said. My voice was steady, unfamiliar. "I'll do it." Daniel's smirk widened. "That's my brother." But in my chest, a different thought burnt. Not his brother. Not anymore. And this time, if I pulled the trigger, it wouldn't be for them. It would be for me. The gun in the bag felt heavier than any weight I'd ever carried. Not just steel judgment. I drove away from the cabin with my knuckles white on the wheel, Daniel's laugh echoing in my ears. The men hadn't followed. They didn't need to. They knew I'd show up. Fear was the leash around my throat. At a red light, I opened the bag just enough to glimpse the weapon inside. Black. Cold. Real. I slammed it shut, heart pounding. When I got back to the motel, my wife was waiting by the door, eyes wide and wild. She grabbed my jacket before I could even speak. "What did they do to you?" I told her everything. The gun, the demand, the ultimatum. She shook her head violently. "No, you can't. You won't. If you do this, you're one of them. Forever." Her words were fire, but I was already burned. "If I don't," I whispered, "they'll come for you." For her. She pressed her fists into her temples. "There has to be another way." But I didn't see one. That night, I sat awake with the gun on the nightstand, staring at it until my eyes blurred. Every sound outside made me twitch. Every shadow became a threat. Around a.m., my daughter stirred in her sleep, mumbling, clutching her rabbit tighter. That small sound snapped something in me. I couldn't let her grow up like this. Couldn't let her inherit a world poisoned by Daniel's madness. So when the sun rose, I made a choice. Not to kill the men they wanted. To kill Daniel. He was the root, the infection, the bridge between me and them. If he was gone, maybe just maybe the chain would break. I spent the day planning. I bought gloves, bleach, trash bags. My wife didn't ask, didn't want to know. But her silence told me she understood. At dusk, I drove back to the cabin. Daniel was there, alone this time, slouched in a chair with a bottle in hand. His bandages were dirtied, his face gray with exhaustion, but his grin lit up when he saw me. "You came," he slurred. "Good. Thought you might have grown a conscience." I set the bag on the table between us. "I'm here to finish this." His eyes gleamed. "That's my brother." The word twisted in my gut. I pulled the gun out, my hand steady now. Daniel leaned back, smirking like he'd already won. "You won't do it," he said softly. "You never could." But this time, he was wrong. I raised the gun, aimed at the man who'd destroyed everything, and squeezed the trigger. The blast shattered the cabin's silence. Daniel's grin vanished, his body jerking as the chair tipped backward. He hit the floor hard, blood pooling beneath him. This time, there was no bandage, no breath, no second chance. I stood over him, chest heaving, ears ringing. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. It was done. But as I turned to leave, headlights flared through the window. An engine rumbled outside. Voices. They weren't his men. They were cops. And suddenly I realized Daniel hadn't just dragged me into his world. He'd left me holding the gun when the law finally came knocking. The red and blue lights bled through the cracks in the cabin walls. Tires crunched on gravel. Doors slammed. My pulse exploded in my ears. I froze in the middle of the room, gun still warm in my hands. Daniel's body sprawled across the floor like damning evidence. I wanted to drop the weapon, to run, to vanish into the woods, but the voices outside grew louder. Flashlights cut through the night, beams sweeping across the windows. "Police! Step outside with your hands where we can see them." My breath caught in my throat. I set the gun down slowly, every instinct screaming not to leave fingerprints but knowing they already had me cornered. My prints were everywhere. My face would be on body cams. There was no escaping this. Another shout. "Do it now, or we come in." I raised my hands, palms slick with sweat, and stepped out onto the porch. The cold air slapped me. A dozen officers had their guns trained on me, their faces hard and unreadable under the flashing lights. "On your knees," I obeyed, gravel biting into my legs. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might burst. A cop yanked my arms behind me, metal cuffs biting into my wrists. My mind reeled. How had they found me? Who tipped them off? Then I saw her. Detective Morales, the same officer who'd stopped by my house after the neighbor reported the break-in. She stepped forward now, eyes sharp, her expression unreadable. "Where's Daniel?" she asked. My voice cracked. "Inside." She motioned, and two officers entered. Seconds later, one called out, "We've got a body." My stomach churned. Morales crouched in front of me, her voice low but razor-edged. "You want to explain why we just found you with a gun and your best friend bleeding out?" The truth clawed at my throat. Because he dragged me into his hell. Because he threatened my family. Because if I didn't kill him, he'd never stop. But I knew how it sounded. I was the man with blood on his hands, a history of texts and calls tying me to him, and now a corpse in a cabin. "They'll come for my family," I whispered, the words spilling out. "You don't understand. This doesn't end with him." She studied me for a long moment, then stood. "Read him his rights." The words blurred. Cold hands shoved me into the back of a cruiser. The door slammed. As the car pulled away, I twisted to look out the window. The cabin shrank into the darkness, Daniel's shadow fading for the last time. But in my chest, dread grew heavier, because he'd been right about one thing. It didn't end with him.